Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Chia and today we're going to be doing our November wrap up. I only read 7 books this month because I tend to get really busy around November and December time. Most people get really busy around November and December time just because of the holidays, and November tends to be really busy for me because my dad's birthday is in November, and then also a few of my good friends, their birthdays are in November also, and then turn into Thanksgiving. Let's get started with my stat. For the genres, I read 3 fantasy romances, 2 of them being dark fantasy, and all of them are adult, and one of them was a young adult dystopian, and then 2 were contemporary romances. My average rating was actually pretty good this month. For November was 4.25 stars, and then the average pages I read, despite it only being like 7 books, I read 3,232 pages. So let's get started. So the first book I read was The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. This is sort of like a dark fantasy romance. It takes place in a cathedral area, and then also it follows a character named Sybil. She is one of the 6 diviners, and people all over their land come to basically get their futures told by these diviners, and then they get essentially drowned, and during their drowning they see visions of the person's future, and then they see omens that represent parts of their future, and so on and so forth. They have to stay in the service for about 10 years, and then after 10 years they're allowed to go and live the life they want to, and then one of these days a king comes to get their divination told. He brings along his knights because he needs protection, of course, and Sybil ends up sort of having a terrible run-in with one of the soldiers, and his name is Roderick or Rory. There's also a gargoyle, and he calls everyone Bartholomew. I've mentioned before several times on my channel how much I love Rachel Gillig's writing. Her writing is very atmospheric, and she puts you into the time period that it's in. This is set more of like in a gothic time period where everything's dark, and slowly one by one each of the diviners starts disappearing until Sybil's probably the only one left, and so she has to team up with Rory and the rest of the soldiers that they're part of and the king to find out what's happening to these diviners because she has no other choice. And this is the story of like breaking down her beliefs and how she has been always taught to see something else, but in truth maybe it's not completely the truth, and so she starts opening her eyes and she starts traveling around the different areas to find her fellow diviners. She sort of has like a enemies to lovers kind of dynamic with Rory, but I don't really think they're sort of enemies. They just like heavily dislike each other at first because Rory doesn't believe in the stuff that they're representing, and I absolutely love this book. It's just, it was kind of slow going a little bit. The first part of the book, maybe the first 50 pages, I was really into, but then the middle kind of started dragging on because there are points in the plot where it just kind of hit a lull. And so when they were traveling around, there's like little things that we had to uncover about different characters in this group, and because of that I only gave it a 4.25 when I've given like her previous Shepherd King duology 4.5 and 5 stars. So this one I was a little bit disappointed in the middle at, but once it started picking up and like the things after she uncovers a lot of things and then everything gets put into action, and there was like a huge plot twist at the end, and I had a feeling it was coming, but it was just shocking nonetheless. I absolutely loved it at the end, and I cannot wait till the second book comes out. Like I said, Rachel Gillig writes very atmospheric. It was perfect for spooky season. I started reading it around end of October time and then finished it in the beginning of November. I love the transformation Sybil goes through from the beginning of the book to the end because of the things that she's had to basically unteach herself, and also trying to find out who she was outside of the diviners and outside of the beliefs that she was taught. So I love that aspect of it, and my favorite character was definitely the gargoyle, and I cannot wait for the second one to come out. It's a duology and it's coming out September 1st, I want to say. I already pre-ordered it, so I'm so excited to finish the story because I really want to see what happens after that ending. And then the second book I finished in November was Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins. This is a part of the Hunger Games trilogy. I don't know if I mentioned here before, I probably have. I am slowly making my way through rereading the first trilogy of Hunger Games so that I can get to Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and also to Sunrise on the Reaping, because Sunrise on the Reaping came out earlier this year. I wanted to just like dive into it, but there's a lot of people who said it's better if I reread the Hunger Games first before I jump into it, because there's a lot of Easter eggs that jump from here into the book into Sunrise on the Reaping. Because in the second book, I know that Sunrise on the Reaping is Haymitch's story and Haymitch's games, and in the second book we know a little bit more about Haymitch's games and how he ended up surviving his games, and that one is definitely going to come into play, of course, because it is his games in Sunrise on the Reaping. So I'm happy I'm rereading it, and I gave gave it a 5 stars the first time I read it, and it's another 5 stars for me again. Catching Fire has always been my favorite of the whole entire series, and I love like the characters that we meet in this because of like the type of games that they have to go through. My favorite characters coming in because Finnick is one of my favorite characters. I love his story. It's such a sad backstory, but I love the trajectory of it and how he ends up becoming important to Peeta and Katniss. So yes, of course, Catching Fire got a 5 stars for me. I love it, and I can't wait to finish the last book so that I can finally start my Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and Sunrise on the Reaping read. The next book I picked up in the month of November was Alchemy of Secrets by Stephanie Garber. This is her first adult fantasy book. She's always written young adult fantasy books. In case you don't know, she wrote the Caraval series, and she also wrote the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, both very YA. I went into this book with a lot of high expectations. I read it in my reading new releases vlog. The new releases vlog is either going to be posted before this one, but I have a feeling I'm probably going to post this one before it. If you want my in-depth thoughts about it, check out that video. But this one follows a character named Helen St. James. She attends a class called Folklore 571. It's an upper grad class, and she ends up trying to attend this class where it's just tales about Hollywood folklore. And so it's a very mysterious class. The only way people know about it is by word of mouth, and also she has to uncover clues on how to get to this class. And then every single week, the professor who teaches it gives out clues to her students on how to find it, because it's like set in different parts of Hollywood. And so one day she ends up uncovering like one of the mysteries that are in this book. She ends up running across it, and it's called the Watchman folklore. And apparently if you meet the Watchman, he'll tell you when you're going to die, the exact time and also the exact day. And so when Holland gets a call from the Watchman, she ends up finding out that she is going to die in about 28 hours on Halloween night at exactly 11:59 p.m. And the only way to stop herself from dying is to get the alchemical heart. And it's like also another one of the professor's folklore. I came into this book with such high expectations because I love Stephanie Garber's writing, and I was so excited to see that she was writing an adult novel. And so I was hoping the writing would be more adult, but it was more similar to her young adult writing, where it's very whimsical, very magical. And the thing that kind of really irritated me about this book, Helen St. James was very naive, and she was very gullible also. She was very trusting of the people who would come to her and tell her that she should trust them for so-and-so reasons. I did love the setting of old Hollywood, even though it was set in like modern times. All the different stories that she would go to places in different parts of old Hollywood was part of the magic. I despise LA, but I love the story of old Hollywood. I just felt the story was so difficult to get through because a lot of the things were thrown into there that seemed like it was trying to connect to each other, but there was no connection. It was literally a mess. There was so much going on in the story that didn't seem to connect whatsoever, and I couldn't give it past like a 3 stars. And then the moment I saw the ending, it was a 2.75 stars for me. I couldn't do it. Just Holland just seems so similar to her other female main characters, so I was so disappointed by this. But yeah, it was probably one of the worst books I've read this year, so unfortunately, yeah, I had to give it a 2.75 stars because that's just how I felt. And I know it's a part of a series, but I am not interested in continuing the series at all. It's just none of the characters were endearing enough for me to continue with that, so unfortunately this was a disappointment. And the next book I read was my reread of Quicksilver by Callie Hart. I was getting ready to reread this because Brimstone of course came out this month, and I'm still working my way through it. I want to take my time through it because we have another year till she comes out with the 3rd book, and I heard it ends with a huge cliffhanger, so I'm taking my time with it. But this one follows a character named Sirius, and she ends up falling into a magical fey world because of a Quicksilver pool, and they find out that she's an alchemist, and she's one of the only alchemists left. And so in this magical portal, she is tasked to find a way for people to travel through the portal and use relics so that they can safely win this war. And so she ends up finding people who become sort of her found family, and she ends up also joining forces with a kingfisher, and he's sort of like this mean, broody, tall fae who's very crass. He has like a mouth on him. I rated it a 5 stars the first time I read it, and of course I rated another 5 stars because I absolutely love this world. I know this book is not for everyone. I know a lot of people who've picked it up and hated the way Kingfisher was. They hated his name, they hated the way he spoke and how crass he was was and how mean he was, but I absolutely loved it. But absolutely loved this book, and I love Callie Hart's writing. And then I picked up next, this is also in my new releases vlog, I picked up If It Makes You Happy by Julie Olivia. I heard raving reviews about this from Rachel Catherine and also What Emmy Reads, and they both love this book. This follows a character named Michelle. She unfortunately loses her mom early on in the book. Her parents have a sort of B&B over at this town called Copper Run, Vermont. So to help her dad out after her mom passes away, she ends up going to run the inn for a little bit, but it's only temporary because her little sister, who's still in college, is going to take over it once she graduates from college. So she's only supposed to be there for like 3 months. She starts taking it over in September and is supposed to leave like mid to end December. And so when she moves in, she ends up finding out that she has a neighbor called Cliff, and he's one of those like golden retriever types who's very helpful. I absolutely love this book. It's set in the 90s and it gives like very nostalgic vibes. So Cliff has 2 little girls named Emily and Brittany. Emily is a teenager. She's like 16. His youngest daughter, Brittany, is around 5 or 6. So he has to deal with a teenager and a little girl. So he and Michelle end up like interacting, and she is kind of a terrible innkeeper. It's very Luke and Lorelai coded. Michelle is more of Luke and then Lorelai is more of Cliff. And I love their interactions together. They're very cute. It's a very, very slow burn. And so I love the interactions between Michelle and the 2 little girls, and also Cliff is such a great girl dad. I love that they became friends first and they had an in-depth relationship first before anything started happening. It is such a perfect read for this time of year. It brings me such warm feelings that like old 90s rom-coms used to bring me. If you want very like a wholesome contemporary romance to read, definitely pick this up. I ended up giving it a 4.5. I do highly recommend, and I feel like I'm going to end up rereading this next year when it comes to the holidays again next year. And the second to last book that I read in November was Descended by Greenwich and Lennox. This is set in the same world if you heard about the book Riftborn and also the book Dustbound. I have a tumultuous like experience with Riftborn and Dustbound. Riftborn I absolutely hated, and Dustbound I actually end up really loving. I gave it a 4.5 for that one. I personally would recommend reading Riftborn and Dustbound. If you don't end up liking Riftborn, please push through and read Dustbound because Dustbound is so worth it. And also each books that they come out with I think gets better and better. This one is my favorite out of the 3. I absolutely love the different things that happen in this book. We follow a character named Bias, and everyone who's found to have magical powers has to go through this thing called the Trial of Ascension, and unfortunately a lot of people don't make it out. She has the power of starlight. She can take starlight from the sky and manipulate it into weapons, but she has been hiding her ability because she doesn't want to go through the Trial of Ascension because of how low the survival rate is. They end up unfortunately attending these trials because of like a priest who comes and like basically finds out that she has a power. She and her twin brother ends up getting forced to participate in these trials despite her brother Thatcher not having abilities. I actually really love this book. It was so in-depth. I love the world that was created in here. It's based on celestial magic. I really love it. And also there's like a romance that happens in here too, but it's more of a subplot than anything. There are 4 different trials or 5 different trials that they have to go through in this book. And yes, we have been overrun with so many trials, but the trials in this story are so unique. They're trials that I've never really seen before in other books. It's so good. There's so much intricate stuff that happens in here. It's such a well fleshed out world, and that ending was crazy. I haven't stopped thinking about that ending since I finished it. Highly recommend the story. I gave it a 4.5. I couldn't really necessarily give it a 5 stars because it just didn't give me that 5-star feeling. I have a feeling that once I do read the second book, which is coming out summer of next year, I want to say, I am so excited to continue on with this universe. But I absolutely love this book and I highly recommend, especially if you're looking for a newer dark fantasy romance that isn't cookie cutter with everything else and cookie cutter with every other character. Probably one of my favorite reads of this year. And then the last book that I finished that I absolutely binged yesterday, I got it in under the wire. I decided to pick up Time of Your Life by Jesse Hastings. I wanted to pick this up because I felt myself going into a slump because of just finishing The Ascended, and also I'm in the middle of so many long fantasy romance books right now, or long fantasies also, that I just needed to take a break from it for just a couple of days because my brain was already feeling sort of like mush. And for me to get in a slump right now with like Bookmas coming and Bookmas like being filmed right now, I could not afford it. So I decided to pick up like this contemporary romance because I hadn't picked it up since I bought it a couple of months ago. We follow 2 characters named Joa and also Isolde. Isolde is a world famous supermodel and Joa is the head of a famous like rock band, and they are both famous in their own right. They can't stop but causing sort of like a scene, or paparazzi following them everywhere they go, and so they end up forming a relationship, a very whirlwind romance. And oh my gosh, this book was so toxic. It's told in two different perspectives, from Joa's perspective and also Isolde's perspective. I loved Isolde's perspective. She reminded me a lot of Magnolia Parks. If you don't know, Jessa Hastings is the author of Magnolia Parks. That's one of my favorite series of all time. It's probably like my favorite contemporary romance series of all time because of the characters and the things that happen in those books. Jessa Hastings is like known for character analysis rather than like plot heavy books, and this one's definitely character based. Like I said, Isolde reminds me a lot of Magnolia, and also this book is set in the 90s, so it's a time where there wasn't really any cell phones around, and the only way to really find out anything about someone is like reading the tabloids, and also those tabloids obviously do not tell the full picture of what's happening with a celebrity, and also it examines how these celebrities are dealing with stuff that they have to deal with every single day being a celebrity and what the tabloids write about them. And yeah, incredibly toxic. Joa reminds me a lot of BJ, and BJ is very toxic too. He makes a lot of bad choices, but Joa I think is way worse than BJ. I honestly think that I fell harder for BJ because he does have lovable things about him and characteristics about him that I see why Magnolia Parks fell in love with him. But Joa, oh my gosh, he is so immature. He's such a terrible human being. I hated his chapters, and also it was really hard to get through because he was such an arrogant like prick majority of the time. He was always telling himself that he was like deserving of all of this attention. Joa is a hothead. He is known to fly off the handle. It doesn't matter. He doesn't like know how to handle his emotions correctly. I could not put this book down. I was so mad every single time Joa's perspective comes around because of the actions that he would do. His brother is in the same band that he is, and it's just insane. It's so crazy, and like I absolutely think he does not deserve Isolde whatsoever. Don't know if I recommend this book or not, especially if you're not into toxic relationships, because this book is such heavily featured on toxic relationships because they treat each other so terribly because of different things, and instead of like talking to each other, these are such huge miscommunication tropes that are happening in here, and I could not put it down because it's so bingeable and so addicting because it's like a reality show. You just can't help but watch it and not look away, and like it's a train wreck. But I ended up giving this 4 stars. It's probably not going to be my favorite book ever, but I cannot wait till the second book comes out. I think it's going to be a duology because the way it ended, oh my god, it was so insane, and I just couldn't put it down. And it's such a quick book to get through. It's only 322 pages, so it's not that long. Pick this up at your own risk. So that's all I can say about it, but I absolutely could not put this down. That was all the books that I read in the month of November. I am going to be diving into my winter TBR and also my Christmas romances, Christmas contemporary books in the next month. I'm so excited for that. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day and enjoying the rest of your December, and I will be posting consistently every other day for Bookmas. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you want more videos like this. It really does help my channel a lot, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.